first, I think we got to start off with recruiting. It's been a busy summer for recruiting, and in the Summit Athletic Conference across the city of Fort Wayne, across the state, really. And one of the top people to that really breaks all of this down is, from a recruiting standpoint, is Alan Trieu from 247 Sports, the Midwest recruiting expert. Alan, thanks for joining us on our very first episode, our very first guest here on Upon Further Review.
Yeah, I'm honored. Happy to come on, and thanks for having me.
Sure.
Yeah, it's great
so
for
talk
you.
a little bit about, just off the bat, kind of what you do for 247 Sports and really how that fits in with a lot of the talent we see coming through high school sports here in Fort Wayne, Indiana.
Yeah, at 247 Sports Art, we cover recruiting at the major level, Division One. Not necessarily just Power Five, but Division One is what we focus on. We write articles on the players, on the prospective recruits. We cover events from 7-on-7s to camps to games, and then people focus a lot on the player rankings as well. So we do evaluate, rate, and rank the players. We have a whole team that does that. And so I cover the Midwest, and Indiana is obviously part of that, but I have 10 states that I cover. And then we have Steve Wiltfong, who I know a lot of people who follow Indiana high school football know Steve's name. He lives down in Indianapolis. So he and I have kind of tag teamed Indiana for the most part. We used to be separate. I used to be with Scout. He was with 24/7, and we would compete against each other for the news in Indiana. And now we work together. And so it's taken a little bit of heat off the both of us.
Hey, Alan, I think the one thing that we wanted to get out of this segment, and I think because recruiting is such a big component of high school football now, more so than it's ever been. I mean, it's something that is covered, 365 days a year, it seems like. Before we jump into the specifics of the couple kids that are getting recruited pretty heavily here in Fort Wayne, I think it would be good for the audience to understand, what does it mean when a kid gets an offer now versus that final written offer where it all becomes official and binding at that point?
Yeah, there's a couple of ways to look at this. A lot of offers, because kids, you can't get a written offer until September 1st of your senior year. So most of the offers that these kids are getting, including some of the guys we're about to talk about, are verbal. So a large amount of that, it's a verbal promise that you are going to get that offer on September 1st of your senior year. Now, between the time that verbal offer gets extended and that September 1st date, if you don't take care of the things that you're supposed to take care of, and that's everything from your academics to continuing to progress as a football player. If you don't do those things, then that verbal offer can be rescinded, or you just won't receive the written offer. But in the world that I work in and we cover, like 99% of what we deal with is verbal offers, because that's what kids are getting now. Everything happens so much earlier. Kids are getting verbal offers. They're committing to verbal offers. And all of that is it's a promise between both sides that is verbal and non-binding. A coach is saying, we will give you this offer to play at our school. And the recruit is saying, I am verbally accepting that offer, but both sides are subject to change. And that's where covering recruiting has become kind of a daily 365-day a year, like you said, rat race is covering all of the changes and trying to figure out what is committable and what isn't. So within that verbal offer realm of, these are all the verbal offers that have been extended, you have different levels of seriousness within that. Some coaches extend a verbal offer, and if that kid wants to commit to that university right there, you can take it. Other times there's verbal offers and it's really sort of a, hey, we want to still evaluate you, or this is a verbal offer, but we still need you to come to camp. And so figuring out exactly what's what is something that's changed in my job over the years, because it used to not be that way.
No question. And I think that's the big thing that I think, because a lot of kids will get a ton of what we call offers, right? They'll have it from school A to Z, and some kids will get 20 some odd offers. Some kids get 4 some odd offers. It varies quite a bit through the spectrum of the recruiting game. And I think it gets a little bit misleading in some respects, because you don't know what the qualifier is behind it, right? You don't know if it's a contingent upon. One of the contingencies you touched on was the fact that you got to meet the NCAA eligibility requirements. So those are the things that are behind the scenes that ultimately qualify those offers. Now, segueing here into the guys that we want to specific talk about is a couple kids here in the greater Fort Wayne area. And both of them are basically top wide receivers. We first got the Tay Johnson kid who's out of Northside High School. Give us some lowdown on him as you see it from your perspective of watching some of these kids.
Yeah, so first, I think the cool thing is that both the guys we're talking about have top recruits at Northside and then New Haven. Since I've been covering the state of Indiana for now, over 10 years, you've had a couple of recruits come out of those schools, but not necessarily big time top of board guys with these kind of offers. So I think it's great that we're kind of colleges are coming in and recruiting some different high schools. And Tay is a guy who was really known about starting in his freshman year. He came in, made a quick impact on the varsity that helped get his name out there. And then the thing that we look at 247 Sports more than ever now is multi-sport participation. Do you show ability in other areas? A large enough, you look up and down NFL rosters and college rosters, a large number of those players are standouts in other sports. So when you see a guy like Bronte who has some Division I basketball interest, I think he even has one offer for basketball at the Division I level, right away that's a sign for us that we need to take a close look at this guy, because if he's athletic enough to be a Division I basketball player, that translates to receiver very well. So you have a guy with height, with length, catch radius. He can use that athleticism to win contested passes. And I think still kind of just scratching the surface of how good he can be. You watch him and we still see some rawness there. And I think that's exciting when you have that level of athleticism and upside and still so much more room to grow.
Plus, he's got a new quarterback coming in, the Bodie Dickerson kid that transferred in from Dwenger now. So now you've got somebody back there that can get the ball and throw it to him, because he's a big kid. He's 6'3", 170. So I think the biggest question that most college coaches are going to wonder is he a basketball player, or is he going to commit to in football? So that'll be the big question mark as we go through the year, and we'll see. And I know, Eric, I know that you had a couple questions leading into our next young man coming up here from New Haven.
Yeah. Well, yeah. First, the next guy we have is Mylan Graham from New Haven, and from a perspective of the Fort Wayne area, he tends to be. He's first of all, you can talk about him a little bit, but also the idea of him being from New Haven. I mean, it's a smaller school compared, outside of the SAC, outside of the main conference, outside of Fort Wayne. How that all plays in the recruiting factor as far as the attention that a lot of these guys get from some of the smaller schools that may be off the beaten path, just how that kind of all comes about for a kid like Mylan Graham at New Haven High School, who getting big offers now heading into this season.
Yeah, so having done this a long time, I've heard a lot of people say, if you're good, they'll find you. And that's not necessarily true. Sometimes you have to be proactive about getting yourself found. And, to use I think a similar example, you look at a guy like Dwayne Eskridge, who obviously had a great college career and made it to the NFL. If he wasn't at Bluffton, would he have ended up somewhere other than Western Michigan? Who knows, right? But you see examples like that all the time, where that's how some of these MAC schools and G5 schools have been able to be as successful as they are. And I think with Mylan Graham, you have a couple, if there's other guys who are in similar situations, you can take his blueprint in some ways and take a look at some of the things he's done. First of all, training with a guy like Dre Muhammad, who has some connections, has been around for a long time. College coaches have his number in their Rolodex, and they listen to the things he says, because he's had a lot of guys over the years play at the high Division I level. And then some of those offers that you see on that page didn't happen for him until this summer. He started to get some in the spring, but more of those happened in the summer because he went out and earned those offers at camp. And I think if you're from New Haven and some of these schools, if you're Alabama, you may not necessarily have a great perspective on what the high school football is like in New Haven. Who are they playing? Those sorts of things. He goes down there to camp and shows them live that he can play at that level, earns that verbal offer from Alabama. So I think he's taken all of the right steps. Similar to Tay, Milan was a early varsity guy, an impact guy, so it doesn't hurt that he has 2 years of varsity tape and a little bit of name behind him to be able to show these schools what he can do. So I do think that schools are willing to offer guys from, high schools that haven't necessarily had tons and tons of top recruits, but you have to put yourself in front of them. And I think Milan's done a good job of that.
Sure. And I mean, as far as when the recruiting process starts, I mean, when it kicks into high gear, we talked a little bit about that, but really it's not just your high school football. I mean, 7-on-7 continues to grow. The camp process, I mean, that's all a big part of the recruiting process as far as just getting your name out there, getting exposure and getting schools to notice you. I mean, the summer scene with 7-on-7 has completely changed, the recruiting aspect. Just why is that? Maybe, talk a little bit about that, Alan, if you could, as far as the significance of the 7-on-7s in the summer.
I think in general, the 7-on-7s and the camps and all of that stuff, it's significant because if you think about the course of a season, you may only have 8, 9, 10, 11 games at most to evaluate a high school player off of. College coaches are busy during that time. They're trying to win their own games, and that's a lot of film to have to watch. And so you supplement that by some of the off-season evaluation that happens. And now we're also talking about 14, 15, 16-year-old young men who can change a lot. Sometimes the kid that you see on that early season film is much different in June and July. Physically, sometimes kids grow 3, 4, 5 inches at 40, 50 pounds in the course of an off season. So the ability for college coaches to see them in person, I think the May evaluation period, the spring evaluation period, that's why you see a lot of offers going out then, because they can go watch kids work out and even just meet them, see them in the high school, see what they're built like physically. And so I just think that the process has to continue to evolve. And because of that, film is a huge part of it, but it has to be supplemented by some in-person evaluation. And if you take that even up to the highest levels and look at what the NFL does with the NFL Combine, with pro days, with the Senior Bowl, it kind of tracks with that NFL model.
Yeah, I would say the biggest thing that is changed since the days that I was at Ball State recruiting is you're seeing a lot more schools being a year earlier in the recruiting process, that they're coming into the juniors and sophomores now. This is a big year for kids that are in their junior year season wise, because a lot of the decisions will be made off of this tape that they're going to put out. So that's a key component as well. And I tell you, the Fort Wayne area has been very, I guess you call it, fruitful over the last 8 to 10 years. We've had several kids that have moved on to the top Power 5 schools, and we've got several of them in the NFL right now. Jalen Smith, of course, he's battled some injuries, was probably the top name to come out of the Fort Wayne area. But you got Drew Tranquil, who played at Carroll High School, went to Notre Dame. He's with the Chargers. Or a Ben Skronik, who came out of Homestead High School, went on to Northwestern, transferred to Notre Dame. Stock went up, and he's out there on the West Coast too. So just to name a few kids that we've had the privilege of watching on Friday night and being able to cover and reaching that high level of competition. So we hope to do this again, Alan. We'd like to get to the point where we cover at least 3 times a season, and we can get to, some of these MAC level players that are going to be starting to get those offers now, because, the big boys have kind of decided what they wanted. Now they're going to start with them. But come back again, will you?
Oh, absolutely. High school football is about to start, and that'll be all I do and all I think about for the next few months. So there's a reason our company is called 247. So I'll be happy to come on anytime.
Alan Trieu from 247 Sports, we thank you for coming on upon further review, and wish you nothing but safe travels this fall season.
Thank you, guys. Good luck with the show. Appreciate you.
Thank you. Well, like we said, that is a big facet of what is on the kids' minds right now, moms and dads too. And I hope that in itself will give everybody a little bit better understanding. And that's what we're going to try to do with a lot of this, is give us a better understanding than we could go in depth on a Friday night during our pregame show on 1380 The Fan 100.9 FM. So we'll have, hopefully, Alan or Steve Wilfong with us, and maybe have them back on in the middle part of the season, have some more maybe breaking news for the recruiting aspect. But really appreciate that. And I hope you guys that having a chance to watch this first episode or listen to it also enjoyed it.